I told you you were not supposed to drive.
Leave! Leave!
I'm black.
Come on, I'm seeing you in prison for the rest of my life for some.
Welcome to Erie County, New York, where 21-year-old Lavin Turrentine stands before Supreme Court Judge Baller, awaiting his sentencing. In April 2010, Turrentine was involved in a tragic incident, a car crash that resulted in the death of an 8-year-old African boy. At the time, Turrentine was teaching 18-year-old Brianna Hightower how to drive when she accidentally struck the child. In a panic, Turrentine took control of the car and tragically hit the boy again as he was crossing the road. Neither Turrentine nor Brianna held a driver's license. Following the accident, Turrentine was released on bail, but was later rearrested for possessing marijuana and driving the same car with a suspended license.
I told you you were not supposed to drive. So what it tells me is one bad decision after the another. You didn't learn anything. You violated the law again by driving the same car that you already killed somebody with. You were not supposed to be behind that wheel.
It's not like I was joyriding or anything, Your Honor. I just went to the Chinese place to get me and my kids something to eat.
Did I release you on bail to say that it was on the condition you don't joyride?
Turrentine was handed the maximum sentence of 7 years in prison. Meanwhile, Brianna, the other party involved, was charged as a youthful offender. She admitted to reckless driving, but was released after prosecutors showed she wasn't directly to blame for the tragic death of the young boy. In 2016, an unusual incident occurred in a Michigan courtroom. During a heated exchange, a defendant who was in court for violating a personal protection order refused to go into custody. In response, the judge removed his robe and assisted the court officer in restraining the defendant.
I want her to tell me to leave her alone. You know what? I told you to leave her alone. And apparently that didn't get through loud and clear. So today, you're going to jail for 3 days.
The situation escalated further when the suspect attempted to talk back to the judge.
93 days in the county jail. You want to go for a year?
Following that, the suspect directed some words towards the judge.
Tell me to leave you alone. Tell me right now.
However, the judge wasn't keen to tolerate it. During the sentencing for the death of a 3-year-old girl in Detroit, a fight erupted in the courtroom when the girl's father attacked the individual responsible for her death. The courtroom was cleared, and the proceedings were rescheduled for a later date. In this courtroom moment at the Kenosha County Circuit Court in Wisconsin, the judge is not scolding a suspect, as seen in previous cases, but rather a prosecutor.
And the court left the door open.
For me, not for you.
My understanding of
You should have come and asked.
In the Kenosha County Circuit Court in Wisconsin, 75-year-old Judge Bruce Schroeder, the state's longest-serving circuit judge, was in the spotlight during the Kyle Rittenhouse homicide trial. Rittenhouse, an 18-year-old from Wisconsin, faced charges of first-degree intentional homicide, reckless homicide, attempted homicide, and reckless endangerment for firing shots during civil unrest in Kenosha. The trial gathered widespread attention due to its high profile and raised significant questions about self-defense, as Rittenhouse shot and killed 2 men and injured a 3rd. During the trial, Judge Schroeder became visibly frustrated with prosecutor Mark Binger's questioning of the defendant. Rittenhouse had taken the stand and was being questioned on matters the judge had previously ruled inadmissible. Binger argued that Rittenhouse's responses had opened the door to that line of questioning, but the judge disagreed.
Your Honor, Mr. Binger is either forgetting the court's rulings or attempting to provoke a mistrial in this matter. He knows he can't go into this, and he's asking the questions. I asked the court to strongly admonish him, and the next time it happens, I'll be asking for a mistrial with prejudice. He's an
Binger? First of all, Your Honor, this was the subject of a motion. I'm well aware of that. And the court left the door open.
For me, not for you.
My understanding of
You should have come and asked. Why would you think that made it okay for you without any advance notice to bring this matter before the jury? I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, I'll leave it at that.
In 2023, during a courtroom hearing, a fight erupted after the mother of a murdered 16-year-old finished reading a prepared statement. Upon leaving the stand, she walked towards the defendant, only to be stopped by a bailiff. This incident occurred shortly after the defendant, Dylann, pleaded guilty to killing his ex-girlfriend, Diamond, who had been shot 22 times while walking her dog the year prior.
It was horrible seeing my daughter there and looking at him that he did that and he's laughing in my face. It was very wrong and I'm so sorry.
In the Leon County Courthouse in Tallahassee, Florida, Henry Sigura faced accusations of murdering his girlfriend, Brandy Peters, and their 3 children, including his own 3-year-old son. The prosecution suspected that the motive behind these murders came from a dispute over unpaid child support. However, the defense presented an alternative theory, suggesting that the killings were done by a drug syndicate. This case underwent a retrial due to a hung jury in the initial trial, where unanimous agreement couldn't be reached. During the retrial, Henry Sigura took the stand at one point. While being questioned by the state during cross-examination, he and the judge verbally exchanged, limiting Sigura's chances at freedom.
Did you tell her I was over there just because to see my son? But I lied to you about the sex? You didn't tell him that?
No, I didn't tell her that. Okay. I didn't have a chance to.
Why not?
Because the way our conversation went, the phone call ended abruptly. And I didn't call her back. Okay. And every time she called me, I would refuse to call.
And so your answer is no, that you did not tell police that?
Yes, I told the lady Johnson, Investigator Johnson.
You told
over
her
the phone that I was cheating on my wife. I didn't want y'all to find out. Mm-hmm. And she, excuse me, and she, like I say, she went back and forth, and we was arguing about, she know I killed my son. We're gonna arrest you for killing your son, and I hung up on her.
So your testimony is that you told police in this case over the phone,
Investigator Johnson.
Wait a minute, don't interrupt her question, Mr. Sigura. Let her finish her question.
She's asking the same question over and over.
Be quiet.
No, she's...
Be quiet. Now, she asks you a question.
Who you pointing at?
You wait till she finishes.
I'm a grown man.
And then answer it, okay? Yeah. And she won't interrupt your answer either, because the court reporter can't take down 2 people at once. Is that clear? Sir?
In the end, Henry Sigura was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. In 2022, a grieving father attempted to confront the men accused of killing his daughter in a Tennessee courtroom. However, he was stopped by court officers. The suspects were charged with first-degree murder in connection with the death of Caitlin Kaufman. Just seconds after the defendants were brought into the courtroom, the victim's father had to be physically escorted out while the victim's mother sat on one of the benches, crying. One suspect was found guilty of second-degree murder, while the co-defendant was acquitted. In the Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court in Cleveland, Ohio, Larissa Rodriguez and her boyfriend, Christopher Rodriguez, await their sentencing before Judge Nancy Margaret Russo. The events leading to this moment unfolded years ago. On that tragic night, Christopher brought Larissa's 5-year-old son, Jordan, who had special needs, to her while he was unconscious. Instead of seeking help, Larissa gave the boy a cold shower and put him to bed. Sadly, the next day, Jordan was found dead. Rather than calling 911, the couple chose a horrifying course of action. They wrapped the child's body in blankets and bags containing mothballs, then buried him in their own backyard. Nearly 2 months later, a tip from Christopher's brother led the police to Rodriguez's home.
The door on it is open. I'm not sure if anyone's inside.
A police officer arrived to make inquiries.
Well, we got a call wanting us to check on the well-being of the 4 to 5-year-old.
But Larissa Rodriguez was prepared for the police officer's inquiries.
You have a child with special needs?
Oh, Jordan? Yes, I do.
How old is Jordan?
Jordan, he is just turned 5.
Where's Jordan at?
He's with his dad.
Do you know any numbers, how to get in touch with anybody who actually lives in Texas?
I mean, right now, his phone...
Larissa claimed that Jordan, her son, was in Texas with his father, but she couldn't provide a phone number to contact them. However, this statement turned out to be a lie. The next day, the police returned to the scene and confirmed the information provided by Christopher Rodriguez's brother, who had informed them that the child was buried in the backyard.
Basically, him and his girlfriend buried the kid in the backyard.
You'd be mistaken if you thought the couple would show remorse for their crimes. During their sentencing, things took an even crazier turn. Following their arrest and charges, Larissa Rodriguez and her boyfriend entered a plea deal. As a result, the murder charges were dismissed, and instead, they pleaded guilty to charges of involuntary manslaughter, felonious assault, 2 counts of child endangerment, and abuse of a corpse. Back in court, Judge Russo proceeds to sentence Larissa Rodriguez first.
The court imposes a sentence as follows. Counts 1, 2, and 3 to be served consecutive to each other and concurrent to the sentence imposed in count 5 for a total sentence of 20.
Larissa has just been sentenced to 25 years in prison. However, before sentencing Christopher Rodriguez, Judge Russo has a few words.
What we do every day is so hard for dealing with the horrors that are brought before us. And Mr. Rodriguez, this is a horror. I know as a judge I'm not supposed to show emotion. And in 22 years, I never have. This is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. You and Larissa, I look at friends and family and people who are desperate to have children and want to have families, and you two have babies with no consideration. You just keep having them, disregarding the value of their life, disregarding their purpose in life, like they're less.
But Judge Russo wasn't finished yet.
I will not accept the recommendation.
Judge Russo rejected the recommended sentence of 20 to 25 years that both the prosecution and defense had agreed upon. She believed that the suggested punishment did not match the heinousness of the crimes committed.
Every opportunity at so many points to make a difference, to get help, to stop beating somebody, to call the police, to ask for help, to try to take him to the hospital. I have to imagine that at some point you got on the internet and said, how do I bury a body? Because this is unbelievable.
Eventually, Judge Russo sentenced Christopher Rodriguez to 28 years, the maximum available. Christopher Rodriguez appealed the ruling, but the decision was upheld. Currently, both Christopher and Larissa Rodriguez are serving their sentences in separate locations within the Ohio prison system. 3 years ago, Dia, her husband, and their babysitter, Alexis Rasmussen, found themselves in a troubling situation influenced by alcohol and drugs. Inside the couple's home, they engaged in inappropriate behavior. However, the situation turned tragic when Eric Millerberg, Dia's husband, injected a lethal mix of drugs into Alexis, resulting in her fatal overdose. Fearing consequences due to his criminal record, Eric and Dia made a devastating decision. They transported Alexis's lifeless body to a remote area and buried her in a shallow grave. Alexis remained missing for over a month until a confidential informant's tip cracked the case open. Police recovered Alexis's body and uncovered the shocking truth behind the Millerbergs' involvement. After their arrest, Dia struck a deal with the prosecution to testify against her husband in exchange for a lighter sentence. Dia pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including obstructing justice, unlawfully obtaining prescription drugs, and improper handling of a deceased body. During her sentencing, Dia Millerberg addressed the victim's family.
I am appalled and disgusted by what I've done. I've hurt your family in a way I can't fix. You're in my prayers, and I hope one day you'll be able to forgive me, and that God will bring me peace. Your Honor, I'm not going to make excuses for what.
Judge W. Brent West then delivered the sentence, acknowledging the seriousness of the situation.
Mine is, Ms. Millerberg, I do think that prison is the appropriate sentence in this particular situation. I realize that 3 years of allowing you to rebuild and your family and everything of that nature, and then to come in and say, okay, Judge, you're going to destroy that. But I take these cases as I find them to be. I didn't have any control that it took 3 years to bring this to trial. It's going to be the order and sentence of the court that you're to serve 3 indeterminate terms at the Utah State Prison of 0 to 5 years. I will recommend that
Daya Millerberg was sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison, while her husband, Eric Millerberg, was sentenced to 6 years in prison. This is Cyrus Matthews, who was in court for misdemeanor charges related to a road rage incident. If you thought Matthews had already fallen to the depths of evil with his crimes, wait until you see his shocking behavior. Due to his reckless road rage incident, Matthews is facing jail time. However, Matthews attempts to argue his way out of prison before sentencing.
Is there any way that we can reverse this jail time?
Well, you're going to have to go to jail today. If you need to get out to attend a hearing, we can consider furloughs.
When that didn't work, Matthews took a more practical approach.
Is there any way that we can reverse this jail time?
Well, you're going to have to go to jail today. If you need to get out to attend a hearing, we can consider furloughs. Okay? So you have to go today, right?
In case you missed it, Matthews just left the courtroom. He's not in the mood for jail today. His girlfriend, shown here, chases after him. Midway through his escape, he appears to have a change of heart. The court bailiff tries to point out the recklessness of his actions. It seems that Matthews is considering returning to the courtroom, but then his girlfriend arrives, and any hesitation disappears. Outside, with freedom in sight, Matthews and his girlfriend speed off. However, not long after, the Wadsworth police became involved as the situation escalated. Matthews' escape attempt turned into a high-speed chase, reaching speeds of up to 90 miles per hour.
North onto Lyman from Maple. He was in an older gray four-door vehicle.
The chase stopped when the amateur Dominic Toretto crashed into a white SUV. Officer Walzer rushed to the scene. Fortunately, the passengers, a couple with a baby, were not seriously injured. Amidst the chaos, Officer Walzer hurried over to Matthews' wrecked car.
I'm gonna need multiple squads.
I need help, sir.
Okay.
Eventually, the Wadsworth police pulled Matthews and his girlfriend out of the wreckage and took them to the hospital. Matthews was charged with aggravated felonious assault for injuring his girlfriend and the occupants of the other car, and was sentenced to 425 days behind bars. However, his girlfriend was not held responsible for the incident. This is Kayla Mendoza.
Ms. Mendoza, to 2 counts of DUI manslaughter. That's count 1 and count 3. How do you plead?
Kayla Mendoza was convicted of double manslaughter, among other charges in Florida. The 20-year-old woman, who was not licensed to drive, was found guilty of the murder of 2 women while driving under the influence in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on November 17, 2013. Before the crash, Mendoza went to a local bar with her manager and colleagues from her job, where she consumed 2 fishbowl margaritas. A few hours later, Mendoza got behind the wheel of a Hyundai Sonata and drove the wrong way on the Sawgrass Expressway.
Into her car and went speeding the wrong way down the freeway at more than 80 miles an hour. She collided head-on with another car, killing these 2 beautiful young women, Marissa Cotroneo and Caitlin Ferrante, both just 21.
Mendoza was charged with 2 counts of DUI manslaughter while impaired, 2 counts of DUI manslaughter with an unlawful blood alcohol level, 2 counts of vehicular homicide, and 2 counts of driving without a license causing death. Mendoza's then-boyfriend owned the Hyundai Sonata involved in the crash and explained that the "Too Drunk to Care" social media post was directed toward him.
It was for my boyfriend because he was upset I was out, hanging out with them and with Marcelo drinking because he wanted me to be home.
The Ferrante and Cotroneo families filed lawsuits against Mendoza, her boyfriend, the T-Mobile store where Mendoza was employed, and the Tijuana Taxi Company. On May 4th, 2015, 2 months after pleading guilty to 2 DUI manslaughter charges, Mendoza was sentenced to 24 years in prison. Throughout the trial, Mendoza expressed remorse. When she heard her sentence, her apology and crying intensified.
I'm gonna live with that in my heart every day.
After her sentence, Mendoza will also serve 6 years of probation and is permanently banned from driving a motor vehicle. Adrian Dunn, a former convict, is currently facing murder charges in San Antonio. He was convicted for the killing of Rakeem Tariq Charles. According to police, Dunn fatally shot Charles in the back during a drug transaction in a parking lot on July 16, 2012. Additionally, this incident marks yet another legal run-in for Dunn.
For possessing a firearm after this murder. He committed another shooting a month before this murder. And he's shown zero remorse.
Prosecutors pushed for the harshest punishment for Adrian, highlighting his long criminal record and lack of remorse for the murder. Prosecutor Jason Goss was seen comforting the victims' parents by holding their hands before making a case to the jury that a life sentence was essential to prevent further tragedies like that experienced by Charles's family.
Who has to suffer, and this family who has to suffer because of the defendant. And that's why we're asking you for a life sentence.
The crimes were already awful, but Adrian's reaction to his sentencing was equally shocking. He displayed no remorse throughout the trial and appeared completely indifferent. Although he was convicted, his attorney contended that a 35 to 40-year sentence would be more fitting, citing specific reasons for this recommendation.
Adrian a chance to go into prison and try to make something of himself so that when he gets out, if he ever gets out, he can try to be an asset to our community.
After only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury decided on a life sentence for Adrian. As the verdict was announced, Adrian resisted the Bexar County Sheriff's deputies, trying to lead him out of the courtroom. His conduct included swearing and loud outbursts. He was ultimately restrained and taken out of the court. Jeremy and Christine Moody, a married couple with neo-Nazi affiliations, stood before the judge for sentencing. Despite their smiles, they were convicted of first-degree murder for killing Charles Parker and his wife Gretchen. The Moodys, who did not know Parker, targeted him after discovering his address in a sex offender registry. Driven by extremist beliefs, they thought they were on a divine mission to eliminate sex offenders. Police traced them using surveillance footage from the Parker home and identified Jeremy's distinctive tattoos, which included skinhead on his neck and white power on his head. In court, the Moodys openly admitted their guilt and confessed to their crimes, revealing plans to target more sex offenders. They were charged with murder, kidnapping, and burglary, and now face the task of seeking forgiveness.
Our day goes by that I don't regret. And I know that what I've done is a sin. And I believe that God has forgiven me of it. Please have mercy on Christine and I so we can still have a chance to grow old together as husband and wife.
The Bible clearly states, "Thou shalt not kill." I'm sorry I broke that commandment, but I truly believe God has forgiven Jeremy and I hope she will too.
After hearing their remorseful statements and their plea to stay together, the decision was now up to Judge Lee Alfred.
These two people, they had nothing, no way to defend themselves or anything else. And I tell you that I believe that if these two were to get out of jail, I would be concerned that they would do exactly the same thing again. I don't have any question about it. I think it is a case that Justice Sigura demands a life sentence.
After receiving their sentences, the couple shared a final kiss before being separated. Once outside the courthouse, the remorse they had expressed earlier seemed to disappear as they openly revealed their true feelings.
What child molester shit. I think Jeremy and I would have done it again if given the opportunity. I have no regrets. Killing that pedophile was the best day of my life.
What about what you said in court about repenting? Is that not true then?
No, it's not true. My lawyer made me say it.
Do you have anything to say to the victim's family?
May they also. Jeremy
and Christine Moody were each sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2018, a handcuffed defendant tried to escape a Utah courtroom by jumping over a railing. Security guards couldn't catch him in time. He ended up breaking his pelvis and leg and fracturing his skull. In 2006, an Uber driver accused of killing 6 people was forcibly removed from a Michigan courtroom after he lunged at a witness.
I seen him.
During her testimony, the defendant started interrupting and speaking incoherently. The judge ordered him to stop.
Be quiet in today's proceedings, okay? If you have anything to say, whisper to your attorney.
Then, the suspect lunged out of his seat. Deputies restrained him and dragged him out of the courtroom. The defendant was not allowed to return and had to follow the proceedings via a closed-circuit link, restrained by 2 deputies. He pleaded guilty to all charges and was sentenced to life in prison. Miss Yang and her husband, Mr. Huang, were in a South China courtroom, involved in a legal dispute with Huang's mother over a loan she had given them for their wedding. As they were undergoing a divorce, Huang's mother was anxious about being repaid. During the hearing, tensions rose, leading to a heated argument between Miss Yang and her soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law. Mr. Huang disapproved of how his soon-to-be ex-wife spoke to his mother and made his feelings known. The situation rapidly deteriorated from a verbal altercation into a physical one. During the chaos in the courtroom, Miss Yang redirected her anger toward her mother-in-law and struck her on the head. This act angered Mr. Huang, who retaliated against Miss Yang. Amid the turmoil, a lone court official tried to separate the 3, managing to restrain Mr. Huang, while Miss Yang and her mother-in-law continued their violent exchange. With the arrival of the police, the fight was finally broken up. After the commotion subsided, the court official, perhaps in disbelief, chuckled at the rare courtroom drama he had witnessed. Both the mother and son were arrested and charged with assault. Mr. Huang received a 15-day detention, and his mother was sentenced to 5 days. This is Jordan Fuss.
I wish it was me. I did not deserve it. I did.
Jordan Fuss, a 22-year-old from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, is facing manslaughter charges for a 2014 incident where he was found guilty of DUI manslaughter after a crash that resulted in the death of 6-year-old Santiago Giraldo. Entering the courtroom visibly shaken and supported by his family, Fuss had a blood alcohol content of 0.21%, over twice the legal limit at the time of the accident. He was driving his 2004 Infiniti G35 at speeds exceeding 90 miles per hour on Sterling Road, colliding with another vehicle on Davie Road shortly before midnight on October 3, 2014. While the prosecution pushed for the maximum penalty, Fuss's attorney requested a lighter sentence, noting Fuss's deep remorse and his struggles with suicidal thoughts. However, the prosecution highlighted that Fuss continued to use alcohol and marijuana after the crash. During the court proceedings, the emotional impact on the Giraldo family was intense, with Santiago's father delivering an emotional statement directly to Fuss.
I can't just take my son's life, he took mine too.
During the trial, Jordan Fuss was seen tearfully apologizing to the victim's family.
I wish it was me. I did not deserve it. I did.
During the trial, Jordan Fuss expressed his love for his family and girlfriend, whom he had met online after the crash. Following this, the verdict was delivered, and Jordan was sentenced to 14 years in prison.
Court imposes the lowest permissible prison sentence allowable by Florida's Criminal Punishment Code, 14.625 years.
Jordan continued to cry as he learned his fate, receiving a 14-year prison sentence. LaShirley Morris is facing murder charges in Atlanta, accused of the death of 3-year-old Kjuan Mason. The child's death, which occurred on October 21, 2017, resulted from physical abuse involving a baseball bat and was officially classified as a homicide. Morris reportedly beat the boy as a form of punishment, raising the harrowing question: what could possibly justify such a severe and deadly punishment?
We're taking a cupcake from the kitchen.
A child who was present in the home witnessed the attack and later reported the events to the police.
Alert, he was breathing at first. Now he's not breathing.
Glendria Morris, the sister of LaShirley Morris and the legal guardian of 3-year-old Kjuan Mason, was also charged in connection with the child's death for failing to intervene during the incident. Kjuan, along with his 3 siblings, had been placed in the care of the Division of Family and Child Services after their mother, Geraldine Mason, was arrested for reckless conduct in March 2017. DFCS records indicate that Mason had left her children unattended, had anger issues, and had previously abused the children. After her release in April 2017, Geraldine was reunited with one of her children and wanted temporary guardianship for Kayjuan and his twin brother. During the trial, a 911 call made by LaShirley Morris was played, revealing that Kayjuan was already deceased by the time first responders arrived. LaShirley Morris was ultimately convicted of murder, aggravated assault, and cruelty to children. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after pleading guilty to the charges. Louise Matthews is facing a life sentence for his heinous actions on April 13, 2019. He entered his girlfriend's home where her 10-year-old daughter was asleep. Tragically, he assaulted the child. Her mother, awakened by her daughter's screams, was shocked by what she found and immediately called 911. Matthews then took the child, drove to a nearby gas station to buy bleach, and attempted to use it on the girl, likely in an effort to eliminate evidence. Thankfully, his plan was unsuccessful. Upon his conviction, the judge sentenced Louise Matthews to life in prison. His reaction to the sentence was astonishing.
Is there anything you wish to say?
No, man, I thank you for your time.
It's noteworthy how nonchalant Matthews appeared. He was even seen laughing and shaking hands with his lawyer after receiving his life sentence, a reaction that certainly strikes as unusual. In 2016, in New Mexico, Michael T. Cox Jr. faced a conviction for criminal sexual contact with a minor under the age of 13, specifically for molesting his girlfriend's 5-year-old daughter. Following the guilty verdict, a dramatic scene unfolded in the courtroom. As Cox's attorney and the case prosecutor, Deputy District Attorney Scott Key, returned from a private discussion with the judge, Cox attacked Key. In a sudden outburst, Cox shoved Key, causing him to fall and hit a podium before attempting to punch him. This incident was particularly shocking, given Key's role in securing Cox's conviction. Just entering the courtroom, an officer attempted to intervene but was initially unable to control the situation. As Key stood up, he pursued Cox, leading to further chaos that involved bystanders, and encouraged the judge to evacuate the courtroom. Cox was later restrained, handcuffed, and removed from the courtroom. For the initial crime of molestation, Cox was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Following the courtroom assault on Key and a courthouse deputy, Cox entered a no contest plea for these additional charges, resulting in an extra 6 years added to his sentence. These years are to be served consecutively, extending his total prison time to 24 years. Eric Holder Jr. faced serious legal accusations, including 1 count of murder and multiple counts of attempted murder and assault. His journey from musician to entrepreneur and community activist in South Los Angeles highlighted his complex relationship with his past, including connections to gang activities. On March 31st, 2019, a tragic incident unfolded involving Holder and Nipsey Hussle, both known to have gang affiliations. The encounter began with Hussle addressing Holder about rumors of Holder's cooperation with police, suggesting he resolve the issue to avoid further conflict. However, the situation took a fatal turn when Holder, after leaving, returned armed and aggressively attacked Hussle, leading to his death and injuring 2 others. Holder maintained his innocence about premeditation despite admitting to the act, arguing it was a moment of overwhelming emotion rather than a calculated move. The trial in 2022 captivated public attention, focusing not on Holder's guilt in the shooting, but on the intent behind his actions. The prosecution faced challenges in presenting their case, particularly with witnesses' reluctance to testify. Nonetheless, the jury concluded Holder was guilty of all charges.
As a member of the Crenshaw community for over 30 years and a stakeholder, someone who knew Nipsey Hussle, I'm here to say that his has had a devastating and tremendous impact still to this day on our community. He was a philanthropist, an entrepreneur, business person, mentor, role model. He was a hero to many young people in the Crenshaw area, but also throughout the nation.
Our community right now, we lost everything. Everything we worked for, one person took that person to our community. Thousands of jobs we don't have no more. Homies don't have nothing to do. They backsliding. They robbing people now. We had stuff to do. Now they don't have nothing to do. All our stores are closed down. We were relying on God. The whole community relied on them.
Dressed in an orange jumpsuit, he remained blank, and eyes fixed forward as the judge delivered the verdict, 60 years to life. The severity of his actions, ending a friend's life, was met without visible emotion from him. Letitia Stouch was convicted for the brutal murder of her 11-year-old stepson, Gannon Stouch, in January 2020. Following the verdict and sentencing, she has been incarcerated in the El Paso County Jail for the past 3 years. Stouch has received a life sentence without the possibility of parole for her heinous crime.
Navy guy. When you say deck, are you talking about the road area of the bridge where the vehicles go?
Anybody that's driven over a bridge, the concrete walls on the outside is where we take our measurements from.
What side of the bridge are you on, the eastbound lanes or the westbound lanes? And so you note that there's a suitcase there, but then you go on with the inspection?
Yes, sir. And that's when we get into the truck and start our under-bridge inspection.
As of Friday morning, Letitia Stouch is being transferred to the Denver Women's Correctional Facility. The booking process began on Thursday as she was moved from the county jail to the state facility. Despite her request to be placed at San Carlos Prison in Pueblo following her sentencing, the specific details of her placement have not been revealed in the report. The trial and following conviction of Letitia Stouch has drawn considerable attention due to the horrific nature of the crime and the tragic loss of a young life.
I remember looking up at Matt, who's quite a bit taller than me, and I said, Matt, I think there's that day. So I didn't initially open it, and we kind of thought about the smell was so overpowering. We kind of took a step back, little football socks on them. The best I remember to be in.
The news report does not elaborate on the specifics of Letitia Stouch's requests regarding her placement at a particular facility or the conditions of her imprisonment. However, it stresses that she has been sentenced to spend the remainder of her life imprisoned with no possibility of parole. A 30-year-old man from West Virginia, Shannon Bailey, has been sentenced to prison for stalking a 12-year-old girl while she was in intensive care. In an emotional courtroom scene, the girl's mother tearfully pleaded with Bailey to leave them alone. The judge, acknowledging the severity of Bailey's actions, handed down the maximum sentence for stalking, which includes 1 year in prison followed by 2 years of probation. Additionally, the judge ordered Bailey to leave the state upon completing his prison term. Bailey admitted to learning about the terminally ill girl through the Caring Bridge site, commonly used by families to provide updates on their loved one's health. Despite never having met the girl, Bailey sent her Facebook messages and attempted to visit her at Children's Hospital and her home in Waukesha. The victim's mother, Carrie Ganiera Stieghorst, expressed the profound impact Bailey's actions had on her family, especially during a time of vulnerability. She recounted Bailey's persistent and disturbing attempts to establish a romantic relationship with her unconscious daughter, which caused immense distress to their family. Bailey attempted to justify his actions in court, claiming that his intentions towards the girl were misunderstood and not rooted in obsession or infatuation. However, Ganiera Stieghorst refuted Bailey's claims, emphasizing the irreparable harm he caused to her daughter's innocence and well-being. As part of the sentencing, the judge mandated that Bailey serve his probation in West Virginia, ensuring he remains far away from the victim and her family. Despite already spending 6 months in jail awaiting trial, Bailey will be eligible for release in approximately a year, with the condition that he refrains from contacting the family further. Klaus Grabowski's story unfolds in Germany, where he was known to the police as a repeat offender. Despite being arrested for the strangulation of a child and sentenced to probation, Grabowski didn't learn his lesson and continued his criminal activities involving children. Initially receiving leniency, his subsequent offenses led to harsher treatment by the law, ending in an act that provoked a dramatic courtroom incident. Marianne Bach, born on June 3, 1950 in West Germany, faced a tough upbringing with a violent father and an absent mother. Becoming a mother at 16, she had to give up her first child for adoption and 2 years later another child under distressing circumstances. On November 14, 1972, she gave birth to Anna, raising her alone while working as a waitress. Their life was challenging, with Anna left to look after herself. The tragic events unfolded on May 5, 1980, when, after a fierce argument with Mary Ann, a heartbroken 7-year-old Anna encountered Klaus Grabowski. He lured her into his apartment with the promise of playing with his cats. There, he assaulted her for hours before murdering her with his fiance's tights. When Grabowski's fiancée discovered the crime, she immediately alerted the police, leading to his arrest. At his trial, starting on March 3, 1981, Grabowski outrageously claimed Anna provoked him, casting himself as the victim. This incensed Mary Ann, leading her to take drastic action. On March 6, 1981, Mary Ann entered the courtroom armed with a concealed .22 caliber Beretta pistol and shot Grabowski 7 times, killing him. Her indifferent demeanor during the act, captured on video, showed no remorse. Mary Ann was sentenced to 6 years for manslaughter, serving 3, and died of pancreatic cancer in 1996. She was laid to rest beside her beloved daughter Anna, closing a painful chapter marked by tragedy and a mother's vengeance. A former teacher and coach at Hillcrest High School, Brian Lee Johnston, age 50, has been sentenced to a rider program for stalking a former student. Johnston's arrest in September followed an investigation into the stalking conducted by the Idaho Falls Police Department. It was discovered that Johnston had involved current and former students in his attempts to stalk the victim. Additionally, he engaged in bizarre behavior, such as placing a recorder in the victim's bedroom and urinating on her bed. Later, Johnston resigned from his teaching position. According to court records, the victim wanted a civil protection order after ending a relationship with Johnston. She reported alarming behavior, including attempts by Johnston to enter her home at night when she was absent, receiving text messages and calls from computer-generated phone numbers suspected to be from him, threats of self-harm due to the relationship ending, missing items from her home, and punctured tires on her vehicle. The victim contacted the police at least 8 times between May 29th and June 14th to report that Johnston was following her, primarily at a coffee shop she frequented before work. During the sentencing hearing, the victim delivered an impact statement, expressing her fear whenever she encountered someone resembling Johnston or driving a similar vehicle. She also conveyed her loss of trust in others due to Johnston involving her friends and strangers in his stalking activities. In her statement, the victim expressed relief that the sentencing day had finally arrived, eagerly awaiting its conclusion. During his statement to the court, Johnston offered an apology to the victim and his students, colleagues, community, and family. Bonnie Duarte's name is now tragically linked to a car crash that killed 3 teenagers. In March 2018, along the Pacific Coast Highway, she drove at a reckless 79 miles per hour, well over the 45 miles per hour speed limit. Her car slammed into the one carrying Brooke Hawley, Dylan Mack, and AJ Rossi. The violent collision pushed their vehicle into a pole, sparking a fire from the leaking gasoline. The outcome of the crash was devastating.
She had no regard for human life or regard for the effects it could have on others. She knew about Uber and Lyft, but she chose to drive.
Bonnie Duarte stood trial for her actions, and the court sentenced her to life in prison, acknowledging the severity of her offense. Overcome with guilt, she broke down when the verdict was announced. She tried to express her remorse and asked for forgiveness from the victims' families. However, their sorrow was too deep, and no words or apologies could return their lost children.
The right state of mind mentally and emotionally. I didn't think further into the...
This is Judge James Convery, overseeing a divorce hearing for Benjamin Taylor, represented by his attorney, Yvette Ramos Alvarez, who is the attorney of his soon-to-be ex-wife. The main focus of the hearing is to determine Taylor's annual income, leading his wife's attorney to request a copy of his Social Security earnings statement.
Now Ms. Kolsky comes back after everything was finished except for those 2 pieces of paper, his Social Security earnings statements, which he doesn't have, and this supposed report that exists for Lee.
He gets his Social Security every year indicating.
The earnings statement.
He gets his earnings statement. He gets it. He gets it every year. So she asked for it. Why didn't he provide it?
He doesn't have it.
He doesn't. He threw it away?
I would presume he did.
Oh.
Judge Convery is skeptical of the explanations given, so he surveys the people present in the courtroom to make his point.
Judge.
I get it.
I don't get it.
You get it? You get it? Everybody gets it.
Everybody gets it.
Social Security sends it to your home.
They do.
Every year.
They sent it to my home 4 years ago. I haven't.
This disagreement escalates tensions, and Judge Convery makes a remark that ultimately leads to him losing his job.
When did you become an illegal alien?
Shocked by the judge's comment, Alvarez, who is of Hispanic heritage and a former president of the Hispanic Bar Association of New Jersey, voices her disappointment.
I am going to. That was a totally inappropriate comment.
I didn't mean it. I'm only. Listen to me.
As Judge Convery tries to retract his statement, it's already too late. Following a brief pause, Alvarez returns to the courtroom 10 minutes later. Despite Judge Convery expressing regret, the damage was irreversible. Shortly after this incident, he was publicly reprimanded by the New Jersey Supreme Court and lost his job for crossing the line. Shayna Hubers, a young woman from Kentucky, became the main point of a tragic and unsettling crime in 2012 when she killed her boyfriend, Ryan Poston. During her interrogation, Shayna claimed that Ryan had physically hurt her, trying to justify her actions. However, the investigation soon showed a different truth. It turned out that Ryan was killed by Shayna as he attempted to end their wild relationship. One particularly chilling piece of evidence was the video footage from the interrogation room. Singing, I did it, Shayna Hubers displayed chilling behavior that left a lasting impression on all who saw it. In 2015, she stood trial for her crime. The jury quickly decided, taking only 5 hours to find her guilty. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison. When the verdict was announced, dramatic scenes unfolded. Shayna cried and wailed, collapsing into her attorney's lap, desperately clinging to her old life while promising love and devotion to her mother. This is James Field Jr., who is facing murder charges in Virginia.
Her injuries, but it's very noteworthy. She had a lot of psychological injuries. She was not injured when the car drove into the crowd of protests.
I just plowed through hundreds of people downtown Charlotte.
James Fields Jr., an avowed neo-Nazi, drove his car into a crowd during a white nationalist rally, injuring 35 people and killing counter-protester Heather Heyer. Heyer, a 32-year-old paralegal, was part of a group representing against the rally and the removal of a Confederate statue. Fields was convicted in a state trial of first-degree murder, multiple counts of aggravated malicious wounding, and leaving the scene of an accident. Despite the severity of his crimes, the reactions in court were even more intense. Outside the courtroom, Fields' supporters gathered, arguing that his actions were an act of self-defense.
I was scared by your mob that this city might get out of control. This is on the hands of the city government, of the police, and the radical left.
Do you have any accountability for this death at all?
Not at all. These radical leftists are the ones that brought violence. They're the ones preparing for violence. They said in their chants, the Nazis, the fascists, they came prepared.
James and his defense team also argued in court that his actions were in self-defense.
It is alleged that Fields acted in this case because of the race, color, religion, and national origin of that crowd that was at the bottom, the intersection of 4th and Water.
However, the prosecutors and, ultimately, the jury saw it differently. James Fields Jr. was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole by Charlottesville Circuit Judge Richard Moore.
Today, this defendant will spend the rest of his life in prison for violating that law.
James appeared quite emotionless during the sentencing and proceedings. Elizabeth Escalona faced the task of potty training her 2-year-old daughter, Jocelyn Cedillo. Still, she turned it into a horrifying nightmare that tragically ended in the young girl's death on September 7, 2011. In court, rather than admitting to her role in the tragedy, Elizabeth strongly defended her actions. She refused to accept responsibility for the cruel acts against her daughter. As a result, the justice system sentenced Elizabeth Escalona to 99 years in prison. Sandra Lane, a seemingly frail 75-year-old grandmother, hit a heart as cold as any criminal. The shocking tale of her crimes is haunting. It was in her own home that she mercilessly killed her pleading grandson, showing no remorse as she was arrested. The word that resonated in the courtroom was murder. Sandra was found guilty of second-degree murder and also faced firearm possession charges, shattering any image of her as a harmless, gentle grandmother. The trial revealed her manipulative nature, even convincing her family to return the boy to her care. Little did I know the horrors that awaited him, said Jennifer, expressing her regret. Sandra was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Terry McFadden, a 70-year-old who runs an in-home daycare with his wife in Grandview Heights, Ohio, is facing charges related to a serious incident at the facility. In 2019, Franklin County Children's Services alerted the Grandview Heights Police Department about allegations of inappropriate contact between McFadden and the children in his care. Following this report, police interrogated McFadden concerning the allegations.
Do you have any idea what this is about? What any type of allegation there would be that we would be here needing to talk to you?
I'd rather you tell me.
Do you have an idea though?
Initially, McFadden acted confused, pretending he had no idea what the officers were referring to. However, only minutes later, he contradicted himself.
The complaint is nature. Okay. I can tell that. Did you expect me to say that? Because it kind of seemed like it. This is time to get it all out there, just tell us what happened so we can follow up accordingly, okay?
Okay.
Can you tell us what happened?
Well, I know just most recently, Friday, when Jen came up to pick up, she was naked from the waist down, which she had just torn off taken off her, which again, she climbed up behind me and then went over, just rolled over, like gymnastics kind of a thing, and onto the floor, and then rolled over, and then suddenly she pulled her down and did that. So,
is there anything else that might have happened? Because something like that, we really wouldn't be investigating. Things like that happen. 4-year-olds are going to be 4-year-olds.
Did you climb on top of you with her off? Did you touch her in a way that wouldn't have been appropriate for a caretaker to touch?
After the interview, Terry McFadden was arrested and charged. In court, he was confronted directly by the mother of one of the girls he was accused of raping, creating a tense and emotional scene.
Terry McFadden is a psychopath who our girls, fooled us, fooled 25 years worth of families in his wife's daycare. He's a skilled pedophile.
Visibly upset by the family's comments, McFadden was seen shaking his head as they spoke. Now, it was Terry McFadden's turn to address the court.
As to the victims, to the 2 little girls, I hope to work to become a better person when I have served my...
Terry McFadden expressed remorse and accepted full responsibility for his actions in his statement to the court. However, Judge Julie Lynch, presiding over the case, was not persuaded by his expression of regret and prepared to deliver her judgment.
So sick and tired of seeing adults ruin innocent children. These are literally just one step from being babies. They come to a daycare, those parents struggle so that when they release their children to someone during the day, they have some semblance that child is going to be protected and safe. Not let alone 2 of their children being by your own admission, sir. On count 1, I'm sending you to prison for 11 years. On count 4, I'm sending you to prison for 11 years. They will be consecutive to each other for a total of 22 years.
After being sentenced to 22 years in prison, Terry McFadden was escorted out of the courtroom. This is 46-year-old Anthony Thornton.
Be quiet and don't talk in my courtroom.
Anthony is facing charges of sexual assault in Wayne County.
It was DNA evidence, right, that led to the conviction?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Karen. Thornton actually gave that consent for his DNA to be taken in the middle of the interview, and it was through the kids that they found him linked to multiple in the Detroit area dating back 7 years. So it was kids that essentially got him in this.
According to reports, Anthony Thornton's charges stem from the alleged rape of a 19-year-old lesbian he met while they were both living at a Detroit homeless shelter in April 2010. Thornton reportedly lured the victim into an abandoned building under the guise of engaging in activities like drinking, smoking, and playing cards, where the alleged assault occurred. A DNA test was conducted on the victim following the attack, but remained untested for years. When the DNA evidence was finally processed, it revealed a match with Thornton as the perpetrator. In court, Anthony decides to take the stand and defend himself.
It was me and her had consensual. I asked her.
After being found guilty, it's now time for the judge to deliver her sentence.
See, when you tell one lie, you got to remember the 100 lies that you told to cover that lie up.
That wasn't no lie.
Be quiet and don't talk in my courtroom.
The courtroom was shocked when Anthony unleashed his madness, but Judge Vonda Evans was not about to tolerate it.
Be quiet. Take him back.
That's right.
Take him out.
That's right.
Take him out now.
You.
No. Just take him out. I'm innocent.
Unfazed by Anthony's outburst and his removal from the courtroom, Judge Vonda continued with her verdict.
Guilty beyond a reasonable doubt is to count 1 and count 2 criminal sexual conduct.
Eventually, Judge Vonda ordered Anthony back into the courtroom and delivered a stern message, expressing her thoughts about his behavior.
Mr. Thornton, I'm going to address with the comment that you made. It was disrespectful for you
I'm sorry.
to say me.
I'm sorry. Really sorry.
You were out of line.
Yes, I was, and I'm sorry. All I've been saying is how things are.
I'm saying what you said to this court.
And I apologize deeply because you've been treating me fair.
I have never been anything but respectful to you. And for you to say me in my courtroom was unacceptable.
Yes, I'm deeply sorry. Just
take him back.
In the end, Anthony was sentenced to 15 to 30 years in prison for his actions. The stepfather of an 11-year-old girl was sentenced to life in prison after her abuse was discovered when a restaurant manager in Orlando noticed bruises on her body. Kristen Swan, the girl's mother, is also under investigation for child abuse. She was scheduled to appear in court to enter a plea and have her sentence determined.
Bringing your child in to testify against you about your involvement in this situation, the harm to the child would potentially outweigh whatever benefit the state would get.
Swan received a 364-day prison sentence, with credit for 16 days already served, followed by 14 years of probation after her release. The situation might have escalated further if not for Flavian Carvalho, a server at Mrs. Potato Restaurant in Orlando. The incident began when Carvalho noticed something amiss with a family of 4 dining at the restaurant and intervened using a written sign.
I saw injuries that actually made me tear up. Prior to this incident, I have never encountered a child who was conscious, alert, and aware of their surroundings with the injuries I found.
According to Carvalho's police report, Wilson prevented the 11-year-old from ordering food because the child had visible injuries on their face and arms.
For those reasons, I'm going to impose the sentence that the law allows me to impose.
Timothy Wilson was found guilty of several serious charges, including false imprisonment, aggravated child abuse with a weapon, aggravated child abuse, and child neglect. As a result, he received multiple life sentences. This case is alarming, and it is unlikely that anyone would dispute that the severe sentences given out to both adults involved were justified. Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.